Part 2 of Masters of the Air concentrates on the 100th Bomb Group's second mission with Major Gale Cleven as they head to Norway for another targeted daylight bombing. Season 1 Episode 2 provides even more character development with further tension thrown in as the show focuses on a second, dramatic air battle. We kickstart with the debriefing after the team's first mission. The air crewmen discuss the poor visibility issues and the overall chaos of their failed mission. Many are dead or injured after this attack. Bosser and Richard have frostbite and Colonel Hughlin is out of action too after a burst ulcer, which explains why he was coughing up so much blood. That night, Bucky gets rather drunk, remembering the men that they have lost in that first battle. Curt worries about Bucky's mental state as his colleague gets intoxicated. His concerns are confirmed when Bucky asks him to punch him in the face. Bucky meets the new colonel a few hours later, while still drunk from the early morning drinking session. He is immediately demoted by the new colonel. Bucky then has breakfast with Gale. They decide to write letters to the families of those who have lost loved ones due to that first failed mission. How many of the 100th Bomb Group have already died in the war? 3 weeks later, the ground crew can be seen fixing the planes ready for their next mission. We are given a quick introduction to the ground crew's chief, 19-year-old Ken Lemons. While Ken talks to the local kids, a plane crash lands nearby. This is revealed to have been a practice mission gone wrong. They are now down 66 men from their initial 350 starters. The 100th Bomb Group must soldier on in the meantime whilst they wait for replacements. That night, the Americans get drunk at a nearby British pub. The Brits warn them that bombing during the day is just suicide. They have been bombing successfully at night for the whole of the war and cannot understand why the Americans would fight in the day. This debate ends in an argument and a fistfight outside the pub. Curt bests his British opponent before the night is over. What is Gale's second mission? A second mission is then announced and the team heads to their briefing. Their next target is a collection of submarines off the coast of Norway. Unfortunately, Navigator Bubbles is ill and Crosby must fill in for him at the last minute. Crosby is still self-conscious after his last flight but accepts the responsibilities anyway. It isn't long into the second flight before Crosby starts to vomit again due to the turbulence. And once again the squadron's formation is terribly off. The 100th Bomb Group is shot at just off the coast of Norway with their central target in sight. Curt's plane is hit, with 2 of his engines being damaged in the process. He admits that they cannot keep up with the rest of the formation. They are pulling out of the mission early. The gang drops their bombs on their targets, but Bucky promises that they will not abandon Curt and his wayward plane. Where does Curt's plane land after the mission? The Americans are then shot and engage in another tense air battle with the enemy only moments later. They are able to successfully fend off these attackers though, and Crosby plans a new route for Curt and the gang. Curt's plane loses a third engine just as the Scottish coastline comes into view. Curt is able to perform an emergency landing on the cliff's edge though, saving himself and the crew in the process. The other planes head back to their base in England unharmed. Bucky is impressed with Crosby's skills, even if the Navigator was vomiting the entire flight. They all celebrate that night with dancing and music. Bucky even attempts to sing during the festivities. Curt calls Bucky and Gale during the party to thank them for not abandoning him in his hour of need. His crew are safe in Scotland for the time being. How does Masters of the Air Season 1 Episode 2 end? Part 2 ends with a bike race in the base. The crewmen place bets and Gale takes the lead early on. The race is cut short though as all the competitors fall off their bikes in a comical pile-up. And then the air raid sirens start to sound. They are forced to head to their shelters as bombs drop nearby. What are Gale's confessions? Feeling reflective and surprisingly vulnerable for a change, Gale tells Bucky that his father was a drunk and a gambler as they watch the distant bombs dropping. Bucky thinks this explains why Gale doesn't like sports. Gale then confesses to Bucky that he agrees with the Brits. It is a suicide mission to drop bombs during the day, but they both agree that they must lead their team no matter what the circumstances. It isn't their place to question their orders. They just have to lead from the front.